Can you imagine for one moment, and this is an important exercise, I think, for one moment, what's the worst thing you think God could give to you? Or God allowed to happen in your life? What's the worst thing? Just take a second. I don't think it would take very long for us to make our own lists. What's the worst thing that God could give to me or allow to happen in my life? It could be a terminal illness, a broken relationship with someone that you love, financial disaster, and the list just grows from there. I suspect that most of us would not think of the answer that the Bible itself gives to us, answering this question, what's the worst thing that God could give to me? St. Paul alludes to it in his letter to the Romans between chapters 1 and 3. He sort of zeroes in on it in the latter part of the first chapter. He doesn't put it in the words that I'm going to use, but the concept is still the same. The worst thing that God could allow to happen in our life is that we get what we insist on. We actually get what we're determined to have. We want something, and we want it so badly that we'll do anything to get it. St. James actually says in his letter that you want something so bad you'll kill for it. Whether that means physically or even so-called metaphorically, you'll destroy somebody's reputation, you'll destroy their marriage, because you want it so bad, you're determined to get it, and you're going to get it, by golly. And the worst thing that God could give to you is that you actually get it. Because in the process, that will ruin you. You commit perhaps a grave mortal sin, most likely. You will actually damage somebody else and damage the people they're involved with. So the worst thing that God could give us is and I'm saying what I insist on, I think everybody understands what that means. Let's look at the gospel episode we encountered today. 2 apostles in formation. Jesus is training these men. The 2 that come to him, but also the other 10, they're beating them probably to the punch. James and John, the sons of thunder. Here again, the question they pose to Jesus. Knowing who Jesus is, they may not know that they're not calling him or defining him as the second person of the Holy Trinity like you and I understand he is, but at this point, they're pretty sure he's the Messiah. They know he's the Messiah. Maybe not God, the God of Israel, but they know. So when they pose a question to him, it's not like you posing a question to me. That's just one human being posing a question to another, or a request. When they pose a question to him, it's a prayer. So they're praying, they're asking something of God. Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you. Hear yourself saying, God, I want you to do for me whatever I ask you. All right? Whatever I ask you, God, that's what I want. That's what I want you to do for me. We think we don't do this, but I'll try to unveil that sometimes our words betray us. These 2 apostles, who are future saints, are in effect demanding something of Jesus. This should tell us this is not a good place to be in. Jesus indulges in, though. He could have said, rephrase your question. This is inappropriate. It's wrong. You're dorks. You don't know what you're talking about. But he doesn't do that. He indulges them and he says, what do you want me to do for you? So when they lay it out, and basically what's at the core of their request is they want power and they want honor, because that's what sitting at his right and his left hand means. You want power, and because with the power of being at Jesus' lieutenants, his second in command, that's what right and left hand means in this society, that they will have power, be able to use it, and they will get honor as a result of that. Now, let's be clear, power and honor are not in and of themselves bad things. People actually need power to effect real change in the world and in the church. From a president to a prime minister to a saint like Mother Teresa, who clearly had power. Her words had weight. When she said things, there were consequences to those words. Things happened. John Paul II is attributed to if there's one person who brought down Russian communism, it was John Paul. Never fired a shot. It was the power of his witness, his words, and his consistent action, his courage, and all those things sort of being focused in one person but inspiring many, many other people. So power is not a bad thing per se. We actually need authority and power in society. We need it in the church. As Jesus will teach us, though, we absolutely must be intent or focused or understand how these things must be used properly. We cannot just throw them aside. When we throw them aside, we have people burning cities in the United States and leaders not having the courage or the guts, whatever it takes, to stop the burning. You have anarchy if you don't have authority used properly. If it's used too heavy, you have a dictatorship. If it's not used, you have a bunch of cowards in places, positions of authority that they don't really want the difficult side of having authority. So they should get out and let somebody in who will use it, hopefully use it properly. And many times there's no rule book. There is the law, which helps us, obviously, but sometimes it's a matter of prudential applications. But the bottom line is we must be willing to use authority for the good of other people. And this is not just those people out there, whether it's in American cities or our cities or whatever, but it's in our own homes. Because what's really important for everyone to understand, of course, is you moms and dads have a lot of power. You may not think it at times, but you have a lot of power and authority that's given to you by God. Maybe you didn't even want it. By the fact that you got married, you have authority over each other. Scripture says this very clearly. How do you use this? How do you understand this authority over each other? And you have it over your children. How do you use this? How do you understand this authority over your children? It's very important to use it properly, because your children will grow up and they will probably use their authority over their friends or each other, their children, the same way you used your authority over them. That's why we either have well-balanced individuals or really messed up individuals in society, because their parents either refuse to use their authority properly because of whatever reason, laziness, a lack of love, cowardice, whatever, or they used it too harshly and they became almost like domestic dictators. A priest who lacks courage to preach the truth is a coward. Because listen to the prophets. They had to be constantly told by God, you need to do this or you're going to answer to me. My people need to hear the truth. Yes, in charity, applied to different situations and so on, but the bottom line is they need to hear the truth, because only the truth will set us free, and that's what we're ultimately going to be judged on, is our knowledge of the truth and how we lived in accordance with it. So Jesus knows these two men, along with the other 10. They will have power given to them because they're apostles. People will look up to them, they will honor them. St. Paul says to the Galatians, you would have torn your eyes out for me. You know what kind of a drug that is in a person when individuals will do almost anything for them? So when you have that kind of power, St. Paul also says, I chastise my body, lest after having preached the word, I myself not become a castaway. So he had to center himself, and he said, as an angel of Satan was given to me to beat me. It's speculated, he never gets any more specific than that, but it's speculated this was an angel, a demon of lust, that was allowed to tempt him in order to make him constantly reach out to Christ for grace, for what we will call to center him, to make sure he was rooted in using his authority properly. Otherwise, Paul could have been a devil, because you have people willing to do anything for him. This is like a narcotic if it's not understood and used properly. And we see this many times in society and in the church. Think of what would happen if Jesus had told James and John what is meant by his response to them. It's kind of a riddle. You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I will drink? Sounds pretty friendly. It's actually language of communion and friendship. You want to be my friends? Okay, I'm going to teach you. Not right now the full picture. Or be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized. Again, connotes friendship, communion. It's a really good feeling. But the imagery he uses will only be truly revealed on and in the mystery of the cross. That's where it will be truly revealed. Jesus' kingdom will be both purchased and revealed in its full power when he dies for our salvation. In other words, for my true good, Jesus will sacrifice everything so that I can have at least the opportunity, I hate to use the word chance, but you know what I mean, the opportunity to be saved. Because it's not guaranteed unless I accept it and live and die in that grace. And when he's dead, it looks like a complete failure. He's done, he's in the tomb, everybody thinks it's over. But 3 days later, he says, not over, new chapter, I'm writing the epilogue. And they begin to learn that God has his own way of doing things. Jesus has to teach not only these two, but the other 10 now become indignant. You see, that to me, this could be discouraging, or it's a beautiful example of how he takes imperfect individuals and he forms and shapes them, and they allow him to do so. And it must not always have been easy to shape them into great saints. You can imagine what Peter thought. Jesus said, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. Gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And here's the two upstarts trying to, beat Peter to the, to the powers and positions of authority. Peter could not have been impressed. In the TV series, The Chosen, in the second season, there's a great example of the fighting, which I can't imagine didn't take place with these people. And they're just bickering, and if you haven't watched it, you should watch the whole season, and eventually you'll come across it. And how they had to work things out amongst themselves, because they're saints in the making. They're not ready-made saints when Jesus chooses them. The Lord unveils for them that all power and honor and leadership, if it is to have lasting value, meaning contribute to our salvation and the good of others, must be imbued with and flow from service and sacrifice for God and the good of others, and not from ourselves. Jesus does not talk theory, although it may sound so. They will see what he really means with these words. For the Son of Man came also not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Imagine if that was really lived out in our life. We thought about it all the time. We had it burned into our brain, burned into our heart, burned into our soul, and it was reflected in our actions, how it would elevate the quality of relationships in our life. When this is not lived, horrific things happen. Cardinal McCarrick, many years ago, we see how authority is abused, and then others become abused. It happens in companies. It happens in businesses, it happens in homes, and all sorts of things. When people are given authority they need to have to effect real change or to exercise their office, and when it is not used for the glory of God and the good of others, then it becomes it can be a horrific thing. It can actually destroy the person, lead them right to hell, or it can help them to be a great saint if it's used properly. And it can help so many other people as well. But we need to remind ourselves of this often, I would say regularly, because parents are making decisions all the time. A priest is making decisions all the time. You go into your workplaces and you're dealing with people all the time. And to one degree or another, you have a certain kind of authority or power, and you're serving other people. How are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Now, again, I've already alluded to what does this mean for you and me and the specific realities of each day. What we can learn from this episode is that we should never seek these things for our own aggrandizement or our own personal advancement, if that means in an egotistical manner. It's not wrong to seek, for example, political office. Actually, politics needs good Christians. But it needs people of what we would call natural virtue, who are truly desiring to seek the good of others. But I've always said, if you run for an office, your first premise should be in your plan of life is, I'm not being elected to be elected again. Because once this happens, you begin to compromise your values, if you had any in the first place. I'm elected to serve my people. And if that means I'm never elected again, tough. So what? I want to be true to the authority granted to me. You see how so easily it goes sideways. The seduction, the narcotic of the power leads us astray. We make promises we have no intention of fulfilling. Well, if you don't want to hear the truth, then let's just call it a bunch of garbage, our whole political society. So I have to lie to you, tell you things I'm never going to do, because that's what you, me, the public, it's all of us, want to hear. We don't want somebody telling us what really needs to be done, the truth, using their authority properly. And so we should never seek these things if it's only for our own personal aggrandizement or our own personal advancement. But if we do seek them, then we want to make sure we're doing it for God's glory, for the true good of others. And I would submit that where it really sort of the rubber hits the road, so to speak, is do we see ourselves willing to suffer for the good of others? Because if we all have authority to some degree or another, parents, priests, teachers, employees, employers, and so on, and if our life has no tension in it, you have to dig your head out of the sand. If our life has no tension, there's always tension in decisions I have to make. Somebody's not going to be happy, and this kind of thing. The important thing is that we try to use our authority and power properly. We have to know we're going to make mistakes. And many times, because of our weakness, we may even commit sin. Hopefully it's not mortal sin. And we repent of that and try to repair the damage caused by it. But we can't dig our heads into the sand and refuse to use our authority. That's when society truly goes to hell in a handbasket. Families implode. They start to fray at the edges because nobody will make decisions. Because there's always tension and decisions that are not easy. And a priest, if he won't make decisions, then his parish will eventually, just kind of die. It'll start to fracture, fray at the edges, people will start fighting. He's going to have to inject himself into situations he may not want to. He's got to use his authority properly. The Lord has to teach the apostles this because they're going to go out all over the world and preach a message that some people will just soak up. They'll love it. Other people will say, shut up or we will kill you. And every one of them except one will be martyred for the faith. Now, you and I are not, most of us will not have to die what we call the death of a red martyr, somebody who sheds his blood for Jesus Christ. Where every one of us, because of our baptism, is called to be a white martyr, meaning we have to die to ourself, our desire for comfort. Remember, that will only come in eternal life. Only the tension-free existence will only come with the crown of glory that we receive when we, God willing, see God face to face. It was all worth it. But until then, we are Christians on the march. And we have to be willing to enter into these situations again, not for our own aggrandizement, but for God's glory, the good of others, and I think the way in which we sift through the blindness that comes when we want to think everything is actually for the good of others when it's only for my good, is does it involve tension? Am I dying to myself? Am I denying myself for the good of others? And that may mean I tell you things you don't want to hear, or parents tell their children things they don't want to hear. Or it may be we let go of the reins because we're micromanaging everything and we're stifling people's ability to mature. So it's not a one-fix-all situation. It involves the virtues that cause us to walk a life of tension, to live with tension. But Jesus, if we're doing that for his glory, all my grace is sufficient, he says to Paul. I will help you. If you continually ask me for help, I will help you to use, in this case, your authority and your power properly because you're using it for me and for my children, for the good of others. So this week, I would encourage you to really, this is something I try to pray often, and it's kind of a background to everything I'm talking about here. And I'll put this in the YouTube sermon that we send out. Jesus, and try to pray this often. Jesus, I only want what you want. I really only want what you want. Help me to break through all the fog, all my passions. Know that sometimes we blind ourselves and we're saying, I only want what you want, but I really want what I want. Jesus, I only want what you want. I'm asking for these various things that I need or that others need, but if they are not in accord with your will, please don't give them to me. Don't give them to me until I'm ready to use them properly or they serve your purposes. So let me put it aside or let somebody else do it. Only give me what you really, really want, what will be good for me and good for those people that I have authority and some sort of power over.